Hello and welcome to the build-up here on Balls.e in partnership with Ladbrokes. We're back with you for another week. Lots to look forward to this week. We'll speak to Kevin Doyle tomorrow and talk a little bit about the Premier League weekend. And just in a couple of seconds, we're going to talk to Stephen Ferris about lots of rugby to go on. The URC is back, but obviously we'll talk about Ireland as well. Just note, if you want to listen back to any of last week's shows, obviously we were building up to things, but we did have a good chat about Jason Quigley with Eric Donovan. That's worth talking. Pretty for Jason in the end. It didn't go his way. Obviously, he suffered a broken jaw in the first round, and you know, it was kind of over from there. We found that out recently. He's tweeted today that his the operation on his jaw was a success. He'll be back better than ever, and we'll obviously talk to him in the next couple of weeks. But just to say, we're still proud of him. He still did it out there. And look, I mean, Demetrius Andrade is a hell of a world champion, and what a fighter. And he'll have bigger fights to come as well. But right now, want to focus on rugby. Delighted to say we've got Ladbrokes ambassador Stephen Ferris on the line. Stevie, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I watched the Jason Quigley fight on DAZN. I didn't watch it live because it was like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. But the first thing I did when I woke up the next morning was see the result. Unfortunately for Jason, a Ladbrokes teammate of mine couldn't get the job done, and just that first round, I think it spooked him, it spooked everybody, and there was no way back from him. But yeah, he's as all these boxing lads are, they're very tough men. He'll bounce back, I'm sure, and get a couple of fights to get himself back on track. And who knows what's down the line for him. There's still plenty of years left in the tank for Jason Quigley.
Absolutely. And obviously somebody that I think everybody that spends any time with him, as you have, as I have, will always be someone to get behind. He's a great guy and a great ambassador for his sport as well. So Ireland went out and beat Argentina 53-7 since we were last speaking. Stevie, it was 3 wins out of 3, obviously. Putting 60 points on Japan was a nice way to kind of, banish some World Cups. Obviously, they played them again. They played them already in the summer, but, it meant nothing really. Going out and beating the All Blacks by 9 points being a flattering result for New Zealand. And then to go and kind of back it up with this, start conceding the first try, probably should have been about, 17-7 down at one point, and then to just go and score 50 points again. There's a lot of provisos even about what happened in November. All of the Southern Hemisphere teams out on their feet. We know all that. It's very important to put that asterisk on here. But Ireland couldn't have done more in the last 3 weeks from their point of view, really.
No, definitely not. And I tipped Argentina last week to get in within the handicap. I think it was 14 or 15 points come kickoff, and that was out the window more or less in the first half. I suppose when we chatted last week, Mick, I certainly didn't expect Andy Farrell to go as strong as he did in terms of his team selection, especially in the pack. And that probably would have had an influence what way I would have went with the handicap. Nevertheless, it was a huge performance by Ireland. Got off to a pretty shocking start. A couple of offloads, lovely offloading by Argentina up the middle of the pitch. Made a nice line break. Tag Byrne coming across. Probably a little cold because he wasn't supposed to start the game. Ian Henderson picked up a knock in the warm-up. I think it was a hamstring injury or a leg injury of some sort. He was very heavily strapped when he came out to take a seat in the dugout 10 or 15 minutes into the game. And it was the perfect opportunity for Argentina to kick on, and they didn't. And the thing that I liked about Ireland was there was no panic. There was nothing. They went behind the post, regathered themselves, come back, and just get stuck into Argentina. Maybe not the wide, expansive game that we were all hoping for. A bit of credit's got to go to Argentina with their up and in defence at times, getting off the line. Yes, there were numbers down. I know there's plenty of clips going around on social media about how they negated that, but a little bit more back to type, lots of one-out runners. But I've said this a few times since the final whistle. It was too easy for Ireland, so they didn't really have to do much more, Mick. They could pass the ball one out and make 2 or 3 meters, pass the ball one out, make 2 or 3 meters. And when you get to the try line, they were just hammering the try line with one-out runners and scoring tries because it was that easy. And Argentina, Matera was pretty awful at number 8. Marcus Kramer, the guy who comes with a big reputation, has had 1 or 2 outstanding games for Argentina over the last 6 months. He went missing, actually get taken off with 25 minutes to go. And yeah, as you rightly said in the build-up to that question, Mick, they looked out on their feet, no ideas, and just wanted to get on the plane and head back towards home or head back to their respective clubs. So yeah, that asterisk beside some of these victories, I think in some people's minds, is a lot bigger than others. However, Ireland's style of play over the last 3 weekends, the way they're going about their business is very, very encouraging, very refreshing to see. And, I put on my Twitter that it feels like there's a new page has been turned with Irish rugby over the last few weeks. Yeah. And, people are coming back at me going, oh, wait until you go down to New Zealand in the summer, 3 tests down there, they're fresh. Ireland are, going to be fatigued towards the end of their season. But it's not the results for me. It's the way they're actually playing the game. And that's the difference. And even if they had to get beaten by the All Blacks, or the game at the weekend had been a lot closer, it's their actual strategy getting into games, the way they're moving the ball, keeping huge width on it. I know we've talked about this at length over the last few weeks. Everybody's comfortable in the ball, the short passes inside and out, all the options available. It's almost like it's training ground stuff, but they're bringing it onto the pitch and not going back to their old ways. And that's the huge positive, and that's why I feel like there has been a page turned.
Yeah, on that page, there's a couple of things actually I wondered about. That you're right that you named a stronger side than we expected, and probably for the Japan game, that likewise, maybe that's seen as a warm up to the All Blacks, but maybe it's a chance for new faces against Argentina. The closer we got to the game, the more I was thinking about this. Is this a move by Farrell to say, you know what? You earn your place on this team. And it's like, what can I learn by seeing Conor Murray? What can I learn by Keith Earls coming off the bench? What can we learn by Peter O'Mahony? So on. But these guys are in that position for a reason, and you got to go and take that jersey off them. And by the end of the game, now I know you're 50 points up, you had Sheehan, Timoney, Casey, Harry Byrne, Balakoon, and Tom O'Toole all on the pitch. And again, what are they learning when you obviously Balakoon started, but for the rest of them, what are you learning when you're leading by so much? But that is actually a good injection of fresh blood, and these guys will be eased in, I guess, rather than maybe just thrown in for a cap or two against not nonsense teams, but in these kind of games, and then come to Six Nations they're never heard of again. It might be just a different way of approaching things from Farrell.
Yeah, a different way. I think his hand was probably forced with a couple of those changes leading into the game. Obviously, Nick Timoney, another name that wasn't mentioned there, brought in the morning of the game, and then ends up there's a few injuries during the day, and he ends up getting 20 minutes off the bench and actually played quite well. And it's squad strength and depth, but I also feel sorry for some of the players. It's like the likes of Simon Zebo, who spent crazy amount of time in camp, probably holding tackle shields, the bin juice as the lads are called, when they're not getting any game time and just running opposition plays. And he's now on a flight, or he's landed in Pretoria now for a game this weekend for Munster. Gavin Coombs, I know he fell sick and wasn't fit enough to play in the first couple of games. And even somebody like Jack Carty, he's played really well for Connacht over the 2 weeks leading into the autumn internationals, and there's another 4 or 5 players that I get listed off that find themselves unlucky not to get a cap or two in those games. But I think you're right, Mick. Maybe it's the mindset that you have to earn your spot, and it's not just about coming into camp and saying, oh yeah, he's played well for the last couple of weeks, he deserves an opportunity. It's about really knuckling down, and if there's a door just slightly ajar, like there was in that Argentina game, that whoever comes in absolutely destroys it and takes that opportunity. And even somebody like Ryan Baird, I thought was very impressive at the weekend. His mindset would have been completely different half an hour before the match kicked off, and then all of a sudden he's on the bench, and he's he was on the bench anyway, but he had to fill in, and it's brilliant to see somebody like him relishing that opportunity, and that's what Andy Farrell wants to see, is those boys taking it.
Yeah, Bird made a line break at one stage, and my wife, who wasn't paying attention, was a bit startled by me shouting, "That's a second row!" Because he was honestly moving with the speed of a winger. Like, it was frightening to see. By the way, I had, if I didn't mention Timoney, I'm sorry, he was on my list. It's not an anti-Ulster bias or anything like that. He's there written down. I was just wondering who you think are the winners, just names that jump out to me, and just how you take this forward, right? So we're going back to the clubs, but come Wales visiting Dublin in February, Ireland need to kind of keep this momentum going. And it's like players whose stock has risen, I would say, over the last few weeks. I was just making a bit of a list of it, and it's a longer list than you would expect for November. So I've here Ringrose, Lowe, Gibson Park, Doris, Kelleher, and then in a different way, I guess, because he kind of came through off the bench and then played, I think, Joey Carberry as well. Now, there might even be more, but there's people like, you could put Porter, Furlong, Keenan. They were already, I kind of suppose, in established slots that we were happy with their performance already. But, other guys played well as well. But that is quite a significant list of guys who've gone up in the estimation of me. It doesn't matter, but hopefully also for Andy Farrell, who it does matter for.
Yeah,
I might be missing guys. James Ryan maybe as well.
Yeah, James Ryan, he was exceptional. He has been exceptional the last few weeks. I think Kelleher for me has been the real star of the show. What he has brought is like the physicality and the way he can move. He's just so fast. He's got so much pace. Big, huge handoff, big fend, steamrolling over the top of guys. He's a joy to watch at the minute, and he's got his line out. I know there was question marks over his line out throwing, and that's why Rob Herring had been brought in many of an occasion, especially in the Six Nations, for that starting berth at hooker. But I'll tell you, there's going to be some catching up to do with Kelleher, because he's been in fine form. I think Hugo Keenan as well at fullback, he's really nailed that down. This was a 3-week window where everybody was talking about Simon Zebo. Will he get his chance at fullback? Joey Carberry, will he get his chance at fullback? And Hugo Keenan's just went. It's a bit like, the Rob Kearney stuff. Everybody kind of questions it, and then as soon as he plays, they're like, nah, he's the best. So he's been fantastic. Josh van der Fleer, I think, in the back row, the way he's been carrying the ball, hasn't been as much getting over the ball and getting those jackals and penalties at the breakdown. And he's been exceptional the way he's been approached each game, and I think that combination with him and Conan, and of course Killen Doris, who has been frightening of late. It's a really good combination. So Mick, we could rhyme off all the lads and we could talk about all of them for a minute or two, because they've all been very, very good and very consistent, which is exactly what we want going forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. Where do you see from what we've seen, right? You mentioned style of play being possibly even more important than the results. We mentioned the form of all these players. It's going to be a really, really tough Six Nations. If we weren't the only ones in good form, I don't know, watching Antoine Dupont is just a scary thing at the moment, and you kind of just that translates to all of France, I think, because just it's such a good player. They obviously beat the All Blacks as well. England found a way to beat South Africa in a way that other teams just haven't been. Maybe they were more tired as well, but South Africa, tough beaten team. Wales, I don't know, but you always know Wales are going to show up for the Six Nations anyway. It's going to be a really, really tough Six Nations. I don't think there's going to be a Grand Slam, for example. But is it go and win the championship, or else you haven't done, are Ireland at a point now where you have to go and win a championship, or else it's a disappointment, I suppose is my question.
Yeah, you're right, Mick. That is right. If the boys are going to go into camp in the end of January after the European Cup run, and what are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about the first game coming up and getting off to a good start and keeping it going and winning the championship. I didn't pitch up in a Six Nations just to make up the numbers. You were there to try and win the bloody thing and try and win a Grand Slam as much as you possibly could. I think for Ireland over the last 3 weeks, it's all rosy when you're playing in front of 52,000 Ireland fans, cheering the house down. It was like the atmosphere in the All Blacks game at the Aviva Stadium. Honestly, if people haven't got a ticket to get down to the Aviva for one of the big matches, just break the bank, whatever you have to do, get down there, because it was electric. But now Ireland in Six Nations, they have to go away from home. It's England away from home, and it's France away from home in 2022 Six Nations. They've Wales first up, which is always can be a banana skin at home. But that's going to be the tricky thing. Can they bring the form that they've showed over the last 3 weeks with all the home support? Having things all going their own way, their home comforts, their own hotels. The COVID bubbles are probably a little easier when you're at home in Dublin. The training facilities just around the corner. You can go to Carton House and get away for a few days during the week. That's going to be slightly different when you're having to jump on a flight 2 or 3 days before the match, and the preparation is going to be slightly different. So that's one of the huge challenges that they're going to face, is keeping this form going even when they're going away from home to one of the top 5 teams in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Need to win one of those away games though, one of the either France or England, and it's not going to be easy this point. So look, that's all to look forward to. There is a lot of club. We've got 2 more rounds of the URC, then we're into Heineken Cup. It's then the busy Christmas period. There's a lot of rugby to be played at the moment, and I was wondering actually, before we get into specific games, we've Leinster, Ulster to talk about. We've got Munster going to South Africa. What do you think about the kind of new format in the URC, and that we've had our first international break where the tournament has stopped? For me, there's a freshness about going back to it now that didn't used to exist. At these games, I don't know if we realised that time, but it's so undermined the tournament having these games on when Leinster would have 20 guys unavailable, and we're still winning matches, But how could those games count the same as ones where the full teams were out, And it was actually a really, really important move that they took these games out of these windows, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Mick. However, looking back on it, I wish they'd done this years ago, so that a couple of weeks ago, if I wasn't playing international rugby, I'd go off to Dubai for a holiday,
instead of over to the Dragons.
I think I seen Ian Madigan was out in Tenerife, and a few of the lads were out in Dubai, drinking cocktails, putting the feet up. I was like, flipping heck, that would have been brilliant. Coming to the end of my international career and just like, if I'm not playing for Ireland, I'll just go away on holiday for 2 weeks. My wife, we were actually watching, she was like, "You're not working tonight? Like, is Ulster not playing tonight?" And I'm like, no, sure, they're off for a few weeks. What? Like, why did that not happen when you played? So I think it's been a great move. A lot more focus in on the international window. Everybody kind of gets involved in that. And now that that's out of the way and there's a line drawn until the Six Nations, we can all get our teeth stuck back into the URC. And I'm really excited. I think Josh van der Fleer said in his post-match interview at the weekend about, it's been a real joy to play with all these players over the last, number of weeks, but we can't wait to kick lumps out of each other this weekend when they go head to head. Obviously, Ulster travelling down to Leinster. So, yeah, it's brilliant, the URC. Some of the big games this weekend. Munster having to jump on a flight to head over to play the Bulls. A few talking points in there, but no, I think it's been brilliant. And it's tough because they still have to cram an awful amount of games into the season. And, if you're playing internationals and you're playing, the majority of the URC games, those games do rack up. But thankfully, we're in a really good position here in Ireland that, a lot of those lads have played at the weekend, more so the Leinster guys, because they were, dominating the Irish team. They will get a rest now probably for this week, or if they play this week, maybe next week, and we'll see how it goes. But it's brilliant. I certainly can't wait for this weekend to kick off again, Mick, in the URC.
Definitely. We'll talk about Leinster Ulster. Obviously, that's the big one that everyone's watching, 8 o'clock Saturday. Munster are in South Africa. They're playing the Bulls just before that game, actually, 5:45 on Saturday. And, I think there's net benefits to obviously these South African teams, especially these South African teams versus what's there. But we're still in COVID times. I think there's going to be 2,000 people at the game. It still feels a little bit surreal and a little bit odd, I guess. It's only temporary, hopefully. But my concern for Munster, you're thinking, you mentioned Zebo there hopping on the plane. There's a lot of other guys, O'Matney, Tyke Byrne, Earls, Carberry, all significant game time that they've played in the last couple of weeks, all hopping on this plane, playing for 2 weeks over in South Africa. And then, more importantly, I think it's the other side, is that we're back and straight into the Heineken Cup. For Munster, it's the luck of the draw, but it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you don't want to be hopping into Europe. It's all very well picking your players, but you're going to bring your whole squad there. So even if it's just to travel alone, never mind the rugby, it's not the ideal preparation to go into the Heineken Cup.
I would maybe disagree with you, because I think Jan van Graan will use different players in this mini tour for Munster. unfavorably has it fallen for them, where it is in the calendar year? I'm not so sure. Like they're well rested. Like even Pete and some of the guys that you mentioned, not huge game time over the last over the last 6 months. And with COVID and everything else, not that much game time over the last 2 years. So I think these guys will be fresh, ready to go. They're seasoned professionals, plenty of experience there, and I fancy Munster to beat the Bulls. And I know it's an exciting game because it's the first, they're going to be a different challenge once you head over to South Africa. Wait till you get South African teams in their own backyard. It's going to be a completely different ball game altogether. And just before the URC shut off for the international window, the South African teams looked like they were starting to get going again. Yeah. And I feel like they need to keep it going all the time, and that break maybe hampered them slightly. But Munster, for me, I fancy them to beat the Bulls this weekend, and some of those players that you mentioned to add to a bit of quality, a bit of stardust to Munster getting a couple of good results away from home.
Okay. Connacht are playing the Ospreys. That's the kind of opener on Friday night. Always a fun game, I find this one. But Jack Carty signed a new contract with Connacht. I think this is a good move for all involved, really, isn't it? It's it's Connacht continuing to keep their guys, continuing to build around the team that they have. You hope that the days of them losing their big stars to Leinster and Munster are gone, but for Carty as well, this is the ideal place for him to go and be the man, isn't it, over the prime of his career? Yeah,
definitely. 2025 has he signed on to?
I think it was a 3-year extension, maybe. So maybe 4 years. Yeah.
Geez, handing out 3-year deals these days, flip me, unbelievable. Fair play to him. He must have a good agent. But no, he's been a lot better over the last number of games for Connacht. I know he had a slight dip in form. There was also rumors floating around that he just wasn't his confidence was quite low. He wasn't happy. He wasn't in a great place. And then that was making its way onto the pitch into his performances. And I think maybe he's turned a bit of a corner, and that could have been down to being left out of Irish team selection when he thinks he's playing well and he thinks he maybe deserves that opportunity, and then it doesn't come around. And other guys getting in ahead of him. You have young Fitzgerald there as well. He started a few games just before the whole COVID crisis came along. He started a couple of European games ahead of Carty, and that's what I'm talking about, that slight dip of form where Carty was up and down, and there wasn't that consistency that you need, especially from your right half. But in recent times, superb. I think he deserves the extension. Fair play to him. He comes across like a really good young man. He loves Connacht. He loves playing in front of his home crowd. And, the majority of the time, Mick, he plays very, very well. So, yeah, and it's a guy like him that you can build a team around. And, Andy Friend will be looking to add in a few other boys, I'm sure, over the next 18 months to help Carty and Connacht keep moving forward.
Okay. Well, they're playing the Ospreys on Friday, and we'll keep an eye on that one. Leinster Ulster is the big one, though, Stevie. I've been wrong on what I thought about might be a good or bad draw for Munster, but it can't be the worst timing for Ulster. Kind of lightly played over the last few weeks in terms of the Irish thing. Obviously, Henderson was sort of the only real starter. He's been injured, obviously. I'm not sure is he ready for this weekend or not, but you had Herring in, you had Timoney in this week, you had Tom O'Toole, Balakoon obviously played, so there's been people kind of they've been in camp, they've been getting bits of game, but they should be raring to go for this trip to the RDS, whereas Leinster maybe a lot of guys have been kind of maybe hoping to take a week off, but at the same time, when it's Leinster, you've got numbers 16 to 30 are ready to go there and are nearly, some would say, maybe the second best team in Ireland.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a tricky one for Ulster, because off the back of a hockey and against Connacht in the Aviva Stadium before the international window, very, very disappointing. Had all their main players turn out. Stuart McCluskey was back in there. Other boys, even Nick Timoney, who has played so well for Ulster, he didn't turn up in that game. A few other players, but it'll be interesting to see how they react. It's been a big layoff. So now there's an opportunity to go out there and right a few wrongs. But when you look, I'm just writing a few names down there for Leinster. You'd expect Cian Healy to start this one. Dan Sheehan probably at hooker. Al Alatoa, the tight head that was signed. I think he was Crusaders brought over this season. He's been very impressive. Devin Toner, Maloney in the second row. Luke McGrath, scrum half, will probably captain the side. Harry Byrne at out half, or Ross Byrne, take your pick, who cares?
Yeah.
Both pretty good. And a few other boys returning. It's a seriously strong squad. They'll have had lots of time together. I know they've had a week or two off themselves, just as I mentioned about the holidays and that, but they've lots of time training together and working on smaller things. And they'll be looking to lay down another marker against Ulster. And we know this is a terrible, a bogey team for Ulster. Like, it really is. Like, it's
bogey team for most teams, but especially
it is. But we always go down there, Mick, with so much expectation, and then we go away with our tail between our legs. Me as a fan, I certainly do. Like, I always go in with so much hope, and geez, are playing good rugby, and maybe now there isn't that expectation, like off the back of that Connacht defeat. Then they might surprise a few people. They'll be fresh, ready to go. They certainly will, and if they can get their noses in front on the scoreboard early doors, we'll see what happens. But expect a good crowd. I'm looking forward to the atmosphere in that one. I'm in studio for the Bulls, Munster, and Leinster, Ulster. But I'm really excited about these couple of games. But I do expect Leinster to get another victory over Ulster, unfortunately.
Absolutely. It's hard to argue with you. Unfortunately, it is one of those things that we do long for a more, I suppose, even if we could even get like 3 of the provinces kind of fighting at a slightly even keel, but it just doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. And you see what the international layout, I guess, of the squad and the team as it is at the moment, and it is hard to see anytime soon where Leinster won't have that kind of dominance. I guess people are there to be toppled in sport, though. That's generally how it works, isn't it? There's always a giant that's there to be toppled.
Definitely. And looking at the Ulster squad, you have Rob Herring coming out of the international window. He's probably going to start at hooker. Will Tom O'Toole start? Marty Moore, he's played little to no rugby so far this season. I'm not sure if he's going to be fighting fit. He's a good man to lock down a scrum. He'll be going against Cian Healy or Tom O'Toole against Cian Healy. So I think in this game, Mick, there's going to be really good matchups. Like Nick Timley will probably start in the back row. Or any of the lads for Leinster, Keelan Doris or Josh van der Fleer or Jack Conan, because he didn't play in the last game. One of those lads might play in this fixture. Again, it's a really good head-to-head. Come to the scrum half. Is Cooney going to start? Is it Nathan Doak? Nathan Doak playing really well, but Cooney has got himself into fine shape, and by all accounts is playing some really good stuff in training, and put so much hard work into his strength conditioning work to get himself back fit. So him and McGrath going head to head, another good matchup. Stuart McCluskey in the centre. Who's he going to be facing down? I think he'll be extremely disappointed not to be given an opportunity during the Autumn International. So again, it's another marker for him to say to Andy Farrell, look, give me a chance at some stage. So right across the pitch, there's going to be a good few head-to-heads. And like you're right, Leinster, they now have a target on their back. Like everybody wants to take them down, and I think Ulster are exactly one of those teams that can, and Ulster can take any team down, but they need to play right up here for 60, 70 minutes, because if you only play for 40 or 50, you can be sure that Leinster will get that purple patch and score a few tries and stick that final nail in the coffin like they do to most teams. So it's for me, again, I'm going into this game with a little bit of hope for Ulster, but I just think with the togetherness that Leinster have showed over the season, bringing in a couple of those Irish internationals that maybe haven't got the same amount of game time for Ireland, they're going to be a bloody tough team to beat.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, I know we're out of time. It's just I was going through Ulster's team in my head there, and it's like, do you think that Ulster is lacking maybe that one focal point player? So you had like Coetzee, for a few years, and I was thinking about him being gone, and then like it was Ruan Pienaar beforehand, and maybe there's like, I mean, you've got your like a world-class player in Henderson, and like, there's no doubt about it, but you almost need that kind of like that focal point of the star of the team almost, and I'm just wondering if there might be some guys coming through that are on the verge of it. I think a lot of people who would have seen Nathan Doak earlier on in the year would thinking maybe this could be the guy, but there's been a few of them, and I don't know if there's anybody that's at that point quite yet where they can almost sell tickets on their name. And I know that's not important for winning games, but it kind of is too, because it's, it's everybody can rally around this kind of, we've got this guy, and that's, and this guy's going to be a great combination with him. Ulster feel like they're just missing it this season.
Yeah, I suppose, Mick, like Leinster have got 15 of those players.
I know.
But rewind the clock a little bit and, go back to the Leinster days, like with Brian O'Driscoll and Gordon Darcy and Leo Cullen and, Mike Ross in the front row. Even looking at Ulster, you had, you built your team around John Afoe and Rory Best in the front row. Then you had a World Cup winner and Johan Muller in the second row. Then you had myself and, Chris Henry, 2 Irish internationals in the back row with Pedri Wannenberg, who had won multiple trophies for the Bulls at number 8. Then you had Ruan Pienaar, World Cup winner. And then, you had Trimby and Tommy on the wings. With Stephen Ferris, who came in, late as well. Just that little bit of experience to manage you through huge games. And yes, of course, that team fell short big time, the Leinster and European Cup final in 2012. But looking back, at the lads we were up against, the Sean O'Briens, Jamie Heaslips, Dricos, Johnny, and even some of the other boys, that come off the bench, they were a machine back then. They really were. But just to go back to your point about a couple of vocal points in a team, you certainly need that. It doesn't matter what level. If it's my local club, Dungannon, down the road, they need a couple of boys that are going to be nearly man of the match every single week to get them through games. But you're right. Who is that with Ulster? It's been Nick Timoney at the start of the season, scoring tries and making big line breaks, creating opportunities for others. But apart from him, take him out of it. Who else is really, really standing up? I know Jordy Murphy's to come back in there as well into the back row. Add in Dwayne Vermeulen. We'll see how young Nathan Doak goes. Hopefully Stuart McCloskey can get his game back up to where it was. And then there's 4 or 5 lads, Mick, that can maybe get this this momentum that they need to compete in these really big games. But at the minute, I have to agree with you. There isn't 1 or 2 lads that you would hang your hat on.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. It's a long season and there's a lot of players to develop as well. And that can happen very quickly in rugby where guys can become stars. But Stevie, thanks very much. You've been really good with your time today. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the double header this weekend if you're in studio for it. It should be a good one. Yeah.
Thanks, Mick. Cheers.
Thanks a million to Stevie. We'll be back with Kevin Doyle tomorrow. We're going to look ahead to the Premier League weekend with him and talk a little bit, maybe a little bit about Manchester United. We completely ignored them last week on purpose. And of course, then they went out and they made it so that we wouldn't do it again. It's Manchester United control the narrative of the world of football. We ignored them, and look what happened. They were beaten 4-1 by Watford, and they sacked their manager. So they're playing the Champions League tonight against Villarreal. Michael Carrick's at the helm, at the wheel even. And we'll talk to Kevin about it tomorrow and lots more as well. So join us for that. If you're having a bet on the rugby, the football, anything else, please always gamble responsibly. Visit dunlewy.net for more information. Again, chat to you tomorrow.